that not only Maharaj Prithu, but many other personalities will get whatever they desire from Mother Earth. So it is said that when a calf comes in front of the cow, then not only does the cow and the calf get benefited, but others also will benefit. Why? Because the cow, if it is properly being maintained, produces milk in abundance to what the calf needs. So the cow is happy because it's nurturing the calf. The calf is happy because it is getting nourishment, and everybody else is happy because they are also benefiting from this exchange. So we will see here that even the Prithu Maharaj was upset at Mother Earth for not providing for the residents of his kingdom, which was essentially the citizens of the planet Earth. But in addition to supplying everything for the necessities of the humans, Mother Earth will also provide for everybody in the planetary system. Okay, so verse 12 to 25 essentially is a more of a narration of four things: the milkman, the calf, the pot, and the milk. And neither Srila Prabhupada nor Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur ascribe any specific significance to this combination. Srila Prabhupada alludes to it in a generic way. The demigods, they use a golden pot and the Daityas use an iron pot. It indicates the change in their mentality. But why is the pot for Prithu Maharaj's hands? Why is the pot for the Siddhas, the sky? There doesn't seem to be, or at least at the level that we are studying, there doesn't seem to be specific significance that is attributed, other than some very obvious significances. Like for Siddhas, the pot is sky, and the siddhis that they get is, and they get siddhis, one of which is the art of flying in the sky. Or for the Rakshasas, the pot is skull, and the milk for them is blood. So there's some obvious correlation, but nothing that draws like a deeper metaphorical kind of a connotation to it. So we'll go over these verses pretty quickly. I also have a table that I have already shared with Prem Kishore Prabhu. Hopefully he'll share it with you, which gives these four things from verse 12 to 25. Who was the milkman? Who was the calf? What was the pot? And what was the milk? So it's a kind of a summary. Okay, verse 12. Iti priyam hitam vakyam bhuvadaya bhupatihi vatsam kritva manumpana aduhalsa kaloshadi. After hearing the auspicious and pleasing words of the planet Earth, the king accepted them. He then transformed Swayambhu Manu into a calf, milked all the herbs and grains from the earth in the form of a cow, keeping them in his cupped hands. So here the milkman is Prithu Maharaj, the calf is Swayambhu Manu, the pot is his hands, and the milk is the herbs and grains, which is essentially what Prithu Maharaj wanted. He wanted herbs and grains to feed his citizens. So he is the first one to do it. Verse 13. Tatha pariche sarvatara saramadati buddhaha tatonye cha yatha kamam duduhu prithu bhahivitam. Others who were as intelligent as King Prithu also took the essence of the earthly planet. Indeed, everyone took this opportunity to follow in the footsteps of King Prithu and get whatever he desired from planet Earth. So Prabhupada in the purport says that one of the names of planet Earth is Vasundhara. And he explains that Vasu means wealth and Dhara means the basis or one who holds. So all creatures in the earth fulfill the necessities required for human beings, and all living entities can be taken out of earth by proper means. So Srila Prabhupada also indicates that this explanation of somebody being transformed into a cow, using something for a pot and extracting milk from a cow should be considered to be as figurative. So what is the principle behind it? The principle is that intelligent people take the essence at all times and all places. So when it is said that others who were intelligent as King Prithu, so it indicates like just as he was intelligent enough to take the essence, others who were also intelligent like him followed in his footsteps and took the essence. In the purport to this verse, Krishna Chakravarti says that this verse introduces related topics as an illustration of the earth's words. So in the second verse, Mother Earth has said that I may be very poor, but a learned man can take the essence of knowledge from all places, just as a bumblebee collects honey from each and every flower. So then Vishwanath Chakravarti continues, he says, just as Prithu accepted the essence of the earth's words and doing that achieved his desired results, so others being intelligent did the same thing. The principle is that the intelligent take the essence and the words of all peoples at all times. They again obtained all the items taken away from them because of the absence of dharma during the reign of Vena, and when there was no king. 15 verses describe what other peoples obtained. Prithu Bhavitam means the earth inspired by Prithu. The earth desired to give everything to Prithu. She became completely devoted to Prithu. Bhavita means inspired by. So as you know, the earth planet is also known as Prithvi. So because she is considered, we'll see that later, she's considered as a daughter of Prithu Maharaj. So she is also known as Prithvi. Also because she became an inspired devotee of Prithu Maharaj, she is known as Prithvi. The point over here is that what is being extracted here is the essence of the instruction. And Vishwanath Chakravarti deliberately quotes the second verse to indicate. So the earth is saying that I may be very poor. So she may be saying that out of humility, or she may be saying that factually, that in the scheme of things in the universe, our planet is definitely not the most opulent planet. In the fifth canto, we will see it in the description of the planets in the universe that actually our planet is pretty bare bones. Even the so-called lower planets, material opulence is much higher. And of course, in the heavenly planets, the material opulence is high. So factually also, the Earth planet is not very opulent. So when she says, I may be very poor, it could be taken factually also. But then she says that a learned man takes the essence of knowledge. So essentially what she is saying is that by surrendering to the Supreme Lord, one can get anything and everything. She herself surrendered to Prithu Maharaj, who is the incarnation of the personality of Godhead. So it's not that people came and extracted things from the Mother Earth, but people came and extracted the essence of the past. And Srila Prabhupada does the same in the purport. So when he's extracting the essence, he says that the essence is the performance of yajna. And then he gives, so this is essentially a reference, and these are a few set of verses that are often referred from Bhagavad Gita in the third chapter, verse 9, 10, 11, 12, verse 14, wherein Krishna gives the whole cycle of existence based on yajna. So Prabhupada uses that as a basis and says in the purport that what is the essence? So if you have to follow the footsteps of Prithu Maharaj and his interaction with Mother Earth, what is the essence that we can extract? He gives three things. One is always following the regulative principles. Second is chanting the holy name, Sankirtan Yajna. And the third is performance of Krishna conscious activities. So I've kind of, in the interest of time, I guess extracted the essence of Prabhupada's purport, but for our benefit, he has said that the instructions of Krishna in the third chapter translates to these three things, that we follow the regulative principles, and you can draw the correspondence. If you look at the instructions of Krishna that Krishna gives to Arjuna, then you can draw the correspondence of the verses with what Srila Prabhupada has summarized, the three things. That following the regulative principles, and then he says perform the yajna. Like Krishna first says that as per the instructions in the Vedas. Prabhupada translates that to following the regulative principles. And then Krishna says by the performance of yajna, which Prabhupada translates to Sankirtan Yajna. And then Krishna says, in this way, by the cooperation between humans and devas, this cycle is continued. And Srila Prabhupada translates that to the ongoing performance of Krishna conscious activities. Okay, verse 14. Rishiyo duduhu devim indriyesva atha sattamaha vatsam brahaspatim kritva payaschando mayam suchi. All the great sages transformed Brahaspati into a calf, and making the senses into a pot, they milked all kinds of Vedic knowledge to purify words, mind, and hearing. So even humans, they need more than food grains to survive. What else do they need? They need Vedic knowledge. So uh, uh, even in our preaching activities, we say that the Hare Krishnas are the largest prasadam distributing organization in the world, right? A vegetarian prasadam. But ultimately, we are not just distributing prasadam. There is also knowledge that is distributed, right? So it's not just distribution of grains. Now, prasadam is more than grains because it is empowered by the mercy. But we also accompany prasadam distribution with distribution of knowledge. Like there will be chanting of Hare Krishna, there may be Sankirtan, there may be small discourse. I was seeing one video in Bombay that there's a devotee who was very empowered in prasadam distribution, that he's now been actually asked by the government. So the government gives him money. He used to be a big businessman, and then he kind of wanted to use his skills over here. So he does hot prasadam distribution. And he has come up with the whole logistics of how they cook, and then they carry the prasadam in special containers. The prasadam continues to cook. So when it is actually served, you can see it in the video that it is still piping hot. And it's in schools which are supposed to be sectarian, but he makes sure that they chant Hare Krishna. Of course, he doesn't go personally everywhere. He has many people, but that's the method that they follow. And these are small kids, and they, essentially they're on the school break. But he does spend some. He takes a few minutes to have them chant, and kids are laughing and giggling, and they're chanting. So hunger can be satisfied by grains, but fully satisfied when both the belly is satisfied and the mind is satisfied. Right? So in the Bhagavatam, in the first canto, second chapter, 10th verse, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that the seekers of the absolute truth are never allured by unnecessary engagements and sense gratification, because the serious students seeking the absolute truth are always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth. In every sphere of life, therefore, the ultimate end must be seeking after the absolute truth. And that sort of engagement will make one happy, because he will be less engaged in varieties of sense gratification. And what that absolute truth is explained, and in the rest of the purport he talks about it. So emphasis on knowledge, not for the sake of knowledge, but for the sake of attaining the absolute truth. So in the purport of this particular verse, Prabhupada writes that if the human society remains satisfied simply by taking grains from the planet, as well as other necessities for maintaining the body, society will not be sufficiently prosperous. Right? So he is making this important point. Just by filling the belly, the society will not be prosperous. Humanity must have food for the mind and the ear as well, for the purpose of vibration. As far as the transcendental vibrations are concerned, the essence of the Vedic knowledge is the Maha Mantra. Okay. So let's go on to verse 15. Kritva vatsam surgana Indram soma maduduhan Hiranmayena patrena Viryam ojabalam payaha. All the demigods made Indra, the king of heaven, into a calf. And from the earth, they milked the beverage soma, which is nectar. Thus, they became very powerful in mental speculation and bodily sensual strength. So, who was the milkman in this case? The demigods. Who was the calf? Indra was the calf. What was the pot? Golden pot. And what was milk? The milk was soma or nectar. And Srila Prabhupada makes an interesting point in the purport. Prabhupada's purport in all these verses are essentially preaching purports. So he is using these opportunities to not exactly comment on the verse per se, but he uses that as an opportunity to make related points, primarily for preaching purposes. So here he makes this interesting point about the role of the so-called Indologists and how they have adversely affected the whole body of Indian Vedic literature. So Prabhupada says that the word Hiranmayena Patrena indicates that the Soma beverage is not an ordinary intoxicating liquor. The demigods would not touch any kind of liquor, nor is Soma a kind of drug. It is a different kind of beverage available in the heavenly planets. Soma is far different from the liquors made for demoniac people, as is explained in the next verse. So the reason Prabhupada is making this point is because when the Britishers, they wanted to refute the position of the Vedas, some of them were Indians, some of them were Westerners, but they cultivated this category of people called Indologists, which basically means those who study India, Indologists, right? Study of India. And they were primarily studying the Vedic literature, essentially with the purpose of trying to debunk it. So when these people were studying the Vedas, they started explaining that the Somaras is essentially liquor. So based on descriptions in the Rig Veda, Somaras appears quite a few times in the Vedas, and the way that it is described, they use that description out of context and basically went around saying that the Vedas actually glorify the consumption of liquor. So just as even now, among some people, when you say Vedas, the first thing they'll say is Kam Sutra. The ancient Vedas has produced Kam Sutra. For them, that is the essence of the Vedas. When in actuality, the Kam Sutra is an Upaveda. And it is one of the, just like there is supporting literature for architecture and medicine and other material things, Kam Sutra is one of them. And there was a purpose why it is there. It's not the essence of the Vedas. So, like some of the other places, like in the Mahabharata, it is said that 64 crore people fought in the Mahabharata. And the Indologists will say, well, that land is not sufficient to hold 64 crores. So essentially, the Vedas are prone to exaggeration. So you should not take the Vedas literally. Or they will say that the Mahabharata is 100,000 verses. It's not possible for one person to write a poetry that is 100,000 verses long. So Vyasadeva is a fictitious person. And essentially, there are many people who wrote it. They say also that Bhagavad Gita was developed over several centuries. The reason that there are different schools of different philosophies in the Bhagavad Gita is because different philosophers contributed to it, and at some point, somebody compiled them and called it the Bhagavad Gita. Or, like for instance, Max Muller, he's a German, a famous Indologist. At one point in one of his interpretation, he says that in the Vedas it is said Go Daman. So Go means senses, and Daman means subjugating senses. So there it is said the duty of the sannyasi is Go Daman, which is subjugating our senses. And he basically interprets it and goes around saying that Godaman means that the sannyasis are supposed to kill a cow. So he uses that to justify that the Vedas promote killing of cows, drinking of intoxicated literature, having sex in many perverse positions. So essentially, they wanted people to lose faith in the scriptures, and they succeeded also. Even to this day, we see that so many Indians are embarrassed about the Vedas, that they will still refer to Vedas as mythology, Mahabharata and Ramayana as mythology, and they will still refer to Lord Ram and Lord Krishna as mythological figures, or they will subscribe to the Western perverted interpretation of it. So they did succeed to a great extent, and we are fortunate that there were personalities like Bhakti Siddhanta and Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that they came and they preserved the essence of the Vedas for the few who would stay true to the essence of it. So long explanation, but essentially, if you read the subsequent purports, Prabhupada, like in this verse, he says that Soma is not liquor. Don't think that Soma is liquor. It's a celestial drink. And the reason he's making this point is that don't get misled by the interpretation of this so-called Indologist. Stay true to the essence of the scriptures. Okay, moving on, verse 16. Daityadanav praladam asurashabam vidyadudam kshiram ayapatre surasavam. The sons of Diti and the demons transformed Prahlad Maharaj, who was born in an Asur family, into a calf. They extracted various kinds of liquor and beer, which they put in a pot made of iron. So here, the milkman is the Daityas, the calf is Prahlad Maharaj, the pot is iron pot, and what they extracted was liquor. So Prabhupada, that's when the previous verse said that Soma is not liquor. Otherwise, there would not have been two verses about it. Soma Ras is different. Prabhupada also in this verse, he says that Prahlad Maharaj is significant in this connection because he's a devotee, even though he was born in a family of demon. So why did he engage in something that seems to be demoniac? Because of his mercy. His purpose is by his mercy, the demons were and still are able to have their drinks in the form of wine and beer. So what mercy is there in giving somebody wine and beer when it is condemned, the mercy is that if those who are not able to control their urges, if they were not to get liquor or beer, they would go violent and they would create disturbance in the society. Just like in the first canto, 11th chapter, we saw that there were prostitutes in Dwarka. And in Mahabharata, we see gambling. Then we also see meat eating. In Mahabharata, we see the consumption of intoxicants and like Devi Puran or Shiva Puran. Does not mean that because it's in the Vedas, it is justified or it is promoted. Just like there are Vedas, there are both Vedas and Puranas in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. There are activities in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, because there are people in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. So they're given to engage the people according to their mode, with the understanding that they will gradually get elevated. Verse 17. Gandharva Saroso Dukshan Patre Padmamaye Payaha Vatsam Vishwa Vasum Kritva Gandharvam Madhusobhagam. The inhabitants of Gandharva and Apsara Lok, made Vishvasu into a calf. They drew the milk into a lotus flower pot. The milk took the shape of sweet musical art and beauty. Next verse. Vatsena Pitroryamana Kavyam Kshiramadukshata Ampatre Mahabhaga Shraddhaya Shraddha Devataha. The fortunate inhabitants of Pitralok, who preside over the funeral ceremonies, made Aryama into a calf. With great faith, they milked Kavya, food offered to the ancestors, into an unbaked earthen pot. So Prabhupada, in the purport, he talks a little bit about the process of Pindadan and the position of the Pitras. So he explains that in Bhagavad Gita it is said Pitra Nyanti Pitravrata, that those who are interested in family welfare are called Pitravrata, and they essentially then he says there is a planet called Pitralok where the predominating deity is Arima. Prabhupada says he is somewhat of a demigod, and by satisfying him one can help ghostly family members develop a gross body. Those who are very sinful and attached to their family house, village or country do not receive a gross body made of material elements, but remain in a subtle body composed of mind, intelligence, and ego. Those who live in such subtle bodies are called ghosts. The ghost position is very painful because a ghost has intelligence, mind, and ego and wants to enjoy material life. But because he doesn't have a gross material body, he can only create disturbance for want of material satisfaction. It is the duty of family members, especially the son, to offer oblations to the demigod Aryama or to Lord Vishnu. From time immemorial in India, the son of the dead man goes to Gaya, and at a Vishnu temple there offers oblation for the benefit of his ghostly father. It is not that everyone's father becomes a ghost, but the oblations of Pinda are offered to the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, so that if a family member happens to become a ghost, he will be favored with the gross body. However, if one is habituated to taking prasad of Lord Vishnu, there is no chance of him becoming a ghost or anything lower than a human being. So this is assurance Prabhupada gives on the basis of the scriptures that if one is taking prasadam, then he will at least get the body of a human being. The minimum that he gets is a human form of birth. And of course, if he's following the process properly, he will not take the birth at all. And Prabhupada continues that if one offers oblation with faith and devotion, either to the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu or his representative in Pitralok, Aryama, one's forefathers will attain material bodies to enjoy whatever material enjoyment is due to them. In other words, they do not become ghosts. Okay, next verse 19. Prakalpya vatsam kapilam siddha sankalpanamayim siddhim nabhasi vidyam cha ye cha vidyadharardayah. After this, the inhabitants of Siddhalok, as well as the inhabitants of Vidyadharlok, transformed the great sage Kapil into a calf, and making the whole sky into a pot, they milked out specific yogic mystic powers, beginning with Anima. Indeed, the inhabitants of Vidyadharlok acquired the art of flying in the sky. The Prabhupada explains that both the inhabitants of Siddhalok and Vidyadharalok, they are born with yogic powers. They don't have to perform any austerities. And they can do things like flying into outer space without a vehicle. So this, the Ashta Siddhis like Yam, Niyam, all the way till Samadhi, they practice in these planets. And then he says, but also one can practice this and get elevated to those planets. Prabhupada also says that the name of Kapila Muni is significant because he is the expounder of Sankhya philosophical system, and his father Kardam Muni was a great yogi and mystic. Indeed, Kardam Muni prepared a great airplane that was as large as a small town, with various gardens, palatial buildings, servants and maidservants. And then he traveled all over the universe and visited different planets. Okay, verse 20. Okay, I'll do a couple of more verses and then I'll pause for discussion. Annicha mayam mayam antardhana dubhuta bhutatmanam mayam prakalpya vatsamte duduhu dharanamayim. Others also, the inhabitants of planets known as Kimapurushlo, made the demon Maya into a calf, and they milked out mystic powers by which one can disappear immediately from another's vision and appear again in a different form. So Prabhupada says that the inhabitants of Kimpurushlok can perform many wonderful mystic demonstrations. So the inhabitants in the planet can do whatever they like or whatever they imagine. Such powers are also mystic powers, known as Ishita. The demons generally learn such mystic powers by the practice of yoga. In the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, there's a vivid description of how the demons appeared before Krishna in various wonderful forms. For instance, Bakasura appeared before him as a gigantic crane. While present on this planet, Lord Krishna had to fight so many demons who could exhibit the wonderful mystic powers of Kimpurush Loka. Although the inhabitants of Kimpurush Loka are naturally endowed with such powers, one can attain these powers on this planet by performing different yogic practices. Next verse. Yaksharakshami bhutani pishacha pishetashanaha bhuteshavat saduduhu kapale kshat cha swayam. Then the yakshas, rakshas, ghosts and witches who are habituated to eating flesh transformed Lord Shiva's incarnation Rudra, Bhutnath, into a calf and milked out beverages made of blood and put them in a pot made of skulls. So Prabhupada says that there are living entities in the form of human beings whose eatables are abominable. So Prabhupada says that it's not that they only live in other planets. Even in this planet, there are those who eat flesh and fermented blood. And within the universe, such people live in a separate planet, and the purpose of the leaders of such degraded people are known as yakshas, rakshas, bhutas, and pishachas in the mode of ignorance, and they're put under the control of Rudra, the incarnation of Lord Shiva, who out of kindness takes control of them. So we see that different people wanted different things and attained it. The Devas wanted somaras. The Asuras wanted liquor. The ghosts wanted blood, etc. Similarly, different people aspire for different kinds of intoxication. Even devotees, they aspire for intoxication. Now, what they aspire for is to be intoxicated in the love of Krishna. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nityanand Prabhu is described that his eyes are always rolling with intoxication. But the intoxication that he's experiencing is love for Mahaprabhu and Krishna. So here we see that Mother Earth is reciprocating with so many kinds of people according to their mentality. So the person who became a calf is considered to be a representative of those kind of people. So even though they all approached Mother Earth in the same form, so they all approached the Mother Earth as a calf, yet she produced different things, not based on the form, but based on the mentality of the person. So what does it mean? That the form is not important, the mentality is important, the mental conception is important, right? So that is one important lesson we get. Second lesson that we also get is that whatever that we get is coming from the same source, good, bad, or ugly. Whether it was nectar, whether it was intoxication, or whether it was blood, all was coming from the same source. So in the pastime of Prahlad Maharaj, when Hiranyakashipu asked him that where are you getting this power from, because he tries to kill him and he keeps getting defeated, so he's puzzled. He says, where are you getting this power? Who is the source of your power? And what does Prahlad Maharaj says? That I'm getting the power from the same source as you do. So the lesson for us is that Krishna is empowering all of us equally. What we do is based on our desires. Krishna is empowering Lord Brahma the same way that he is empowering us. Krishna is empowering the residents of the spiritual world the same way that he is empowering us. But what we do out of that empowerment is completely dependent on our consciousness. And based on our consciousness, that nourishment takes different forms. Just like the milk over here can become somaras or liquor or blood. Same source, the calf is also the same, the source is the cow, but the milk is taking different forms because of the mentality of the calf. So in our case, the source is the same, Krishna. The calf is the same, Jiva. The milk is the same, empowerment, but it takes different forms based on the desires of the Jiva. When Srila Prabhupada once was, or in general, when he gave Diksha, he would make this point that how the consciousness is very, very important. Sometimes people would say, why are you giving Brahman initiation to women? Or why are you making the young Western boys sannyasis? And Prabhupada would say that I'm just following in the footsteps that Lord Ram, he gave his mercy to Sita Devi, who's Lakshmi Devi, to Hanuman, who was an animal, to Jatayu, who was a vulture, to Vibhishan, who was a Rakshas. But he gave mercy because he was not looking at the externals. He was looking at their consciousness. The consciousness was that they wanted to develop a loving relationship with Lord Ram, and then he reciprocated. Or we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was born in a Muslim family, and Mahaprabhu would personally go give him prasadam and give him his personal association. Okay? Not looking at the fact that he happened to be born in a Muslim family, but the consciousness was different. So both Rudra and Prahlad, they're great Vaishnavas. Yet they became a calf to get liquor or blood. So this refers to the accommodating nature of the devotees. Now, they were not accommodating in a way that they were encouraging people to go in the wrong direction, but understanding that a certain class of people would go in a much more worse situation. They were making the best of a bad bargain. Just like devotees, they will go in even hellish places and preach accordingly. Not everyone they will preach pure devotional service. When Prabhupada was preaching in India, some people he preached only piety. In the West, sometimes he would preach only vegetarianism, that don't eat meat. In India, his disciples would sometimes get bewildered because to them, Prabhupada would speak very strongly about pure devotional service. But when he would go to the house of life members, especially rich house life members, then he would glorify their piety. It's nice, you're giving charity. And the disciples would be confused. And Prabhupada would say that this is what the most that they can do. If I criticize their piety, then they will let go of that also. So better for them to be encouraged in their piety with the hopes of them being purified towards eventual bhakti. Okay, so I'll take a pause here and see what discussion is there.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. That analogy of milkman, cow, pot, and milk. It's not straightforward as such. The way I understand it is, okay, in layman term, like nowadays, how we are exploiting Mother Earth. Like, some people are extracting gold, some people are looking for mineral, let's say now with all the gadget that we have, the phone, we have to have certain material, certain produce that. I mean, in the same term, is it right that in the same term, a different planet or different people or different category of devas, they are exploiting Mother Earth in their own way?
You have a point, Prabhu. It definitely includes that connotation. In addition to that, the point that is also made is so if you like, and I guess to understand this, you have to take like 3 or 4 steps behind, away from the pastime. So at one level, the pastime is demonstrating the importance of following instructions. That Mother Earth says that I have nothing, but I have nothing to give you. But if you do this, 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 you will get this. Right. So the outer covering of the pastimes, or the higher level covering of the pastime, is this message that Srila Prabhupada gives us, is the importance of staying true to the instructions. Then the pastime also gives us the importance of having a clear consciousness, because by following the instructions, you can get whatever you want. If you want nectar, you will get nectar. If you want poison, you will get poison from the same source. So not only is it recommended that we follow the instructions, but we follow them also with the correct consciousness. Now, in a more specific way, that different things were being taken from Mother Earth, is that analogous to people exploiting the Earth planet for different things? In one of the purports, Srila Prabhupada makes this point also, that yes, people are exploiting Mother Earth, and the comment that he makes is that without completing the cycle. So they're not performing yajna, but they're extracting from Mother Earth. So right now, Mother Earth is happily giving. Like the cow, it happily gives milk. So when she's giving all these siddhis and opulences and somaras, she's happily giving them, because everything is in place. There's a suitable recipient, and there's suitable circumstances. According to the consciousness of the recipient, she's happily giving. But Prabhupada makes the point that right now, that thing is missing. People are not performing the yajna, so they are actually extracting from Mother Earth. And because of that, he says there will be consequences of it later on. There will be floods and calamities and disturbances in the weather cycle, because there is a difference between accepting something according to one's position and stealing something. So one can steal for some time, but eventually they will have to pay the price for that.
One more thing, for example, if whatever ingredient like the herb, Vedic hymn, and okay, not liquor, but soma, ras, and all that, this can be used in the service of Krishna. And whatever that is being extracted from Mother Earth, if it's used in the service of Krishna, then it's okay. And of course, there are things that we cannot use in, like blood, for example. This is not for us. But in a way, if we use anything from Mother Earth in the service of Krishna, like Prabhupada used this word dovetailing, with dovetail, whatever, then it's good.
Yes. It's a very good point. And it's also a point that Srila Prabhupada will make later on. That if you take from Earth, but use it in the service of Krishna, everybody is happy. Mother Earth is happy that she's there for. So why was she hiding the grains? Because Brahma had put them in over there for the service of Lord Vishnu. And when she saw that it was not being done, she started withholding it. The understanding is that if they're being used in the service of Krishna, she will happily produce more. Mm-hmm. So anything and everything, and this also extends to the siddhis and the mystical powers and the ability to do wonderful things. If they're used in the service of Krishna, then that is the real purpose for which they have been created in the in the first place. So yeah, thank you for making that point.
Yeah, thank you for clearing this, because it can be difficult to understand the analogy of the milkman, cow, and pots.
You're right. Like I said, I could not fully, and I could not understand myself based on the reading I did, that what are the particular qualifications of the milkman, and why was a particular kind of pot used, and why was a particular kind of milk produced. So there is some broad correlation, like we see that the devas ask for somaras and the demons ask for intoxication. But the essence behind it is that whatever they desired, they acquired by following the right process. So they selected somebody who was qualified. Lord Kapila, Prahlad Maharaj, Indra, Swayambhavu Manu. So they selected somebody who was properly situated, who was qualified. And then whatever they desired, they were able to get it. Now, like you are adding, and Prabhupada adds the devotional component into it, that if whatever they got was used in the service of Krishna, then it automatically becomes perfect. So Prabhupada adds this layer of understanding over it.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah. Okay, so if you don't have any further discussion, let's go on to verse 23. Tatha hayo danda shukaha sarpanagas chitakshakam vidayavad samdudu bilpatre vishampayaha. Thereafter, cobras and snakes without hoods, large snakes, scorpions, and many other poisonous animals took poison out of the planet Earth as the milk and kept this poison in snake holes. They made a calf out of takshak. So Prabhupada explains that there are various living entities in this world, and this verse talks about the different types of reptiles and scorpions. And the Lord provides sustenance for everyone. Then he says the point is that everyone is taking his eatables from planet Earth. According to one's association with material qualities, one develops a certain type of character. Payapanam bhujagana. If one feeds a serpent milk, the snake will simply increase his venom. However, if one supplies milk to a talented saint, the sage will develop finer brain tissues which can be used to contemplate higher spiritual life. Thus, the Lord is supplying everyone food, but according to one's living association with the modes of material nature, the living entity develops into his specific character. Right? So this is one of the key lessons of this pastime, that the Lord is supplying everyone food. Same Lord is supplying everyone the same food. The cow is giving everyone milk. The Lord is giving everyone the same food, which is his empowerment. But one takes that and develops it into something that is according to one's own specific character. Okay, verse 23-24. Pashavo yava samkshiram vatsam kritva chago vrisham aranyapatre chadukshan mragendrena chadam strinaha kravyada pranina kravyam Duduhu Sve Kalevare Suparnavatsa Vihagasha Charam Cha Charam Evacha. The four-legged animals like cows made a calf out of the bull who carries Lord Shiva and made a milking pot out of the forest. Thus they got fresh green grass to eat. Ferocious animals like tigers transformed a lion into a calf, and they were able to get flesh for milk. The birds made a calf out of Garud and took milk from the planet Earth in the form of moving insects and non-moving in the form of moving insects and non-moving plants and grasses. The Prabhupada said there are many carnivorous birds descended from Garuda, the winged carrier of Lord Vishnu. Indeed, there is a particular type of bird that is very fond of eating monkeys. And eagles are fond of eating goats. So one may be a little skeptical about this, but it's actually factual that in the hilly areas, the eagles actually hunt goats. And the goats weigh like 10 times the eagle does. But essentially what the eagles do is, because in hilly areas, the goats that climb on the hills to eat grass, so the eagles will basically come and they will surprise the goat and they will destabilize it and the goats fall down. So when they fall down, they die and then they eat. Then they eat them. And then Prabhupada says, many birds only eat fruits and berries. Therefore, the words charam referring to moving animals and urchtam referring to grass, fruits, and vegetables are mentioned in this verse. Then some of them ate urcharam, which is vegetation, and charam, some of them ate, which is other animals. Verse 25. Vatavatsa vanaspatya prathagrasamayam payaha giriyo hima vadvatsa nana dhatun swasan sanushu. The trees made a calf out of the banyan tree, and thus they derived milk in the form of many delicious juices. The mountains transformed the Himalayas into a calf, and they milked a variety of minerals in a pot made of the peaks of hills. Verse 26. Sarvasva mukhya vatsena swe swe patra prathakpaya sarvakam dugam prithvim duduhu prithu bhavita. The planet Earth supplied everyone his respective food. During the time of King Prithu, the earth was fully under the control of the king. Thus, all the inhabitants of the earth could get their food supply by creating various types of calves and putting their particular types of milk in various pots. So this is a summation verse. It essentially summarizes everything that was said in the past and also includes anybody or anything that was not included. So obviously this was not comprehensive. So Maitreya, he basically covers it by saying that various types of calves and various types of milk. So it doesn't mean that this was an exhaustive list, but a representative list. And Prabhupada also summarizes the understanding, and he says that this is evidence that the Lord supplies food to everyone, as confirmed in the Vedas. Eko bhavanamyo vidati kama. This is another famous verse Prabhupada like Nitya Nitya Nam Chetna Chetnasnam. Eko bhavanamyo vidati kama. That Nitya Nitya Nams, that everyone is eternal, the Lord is eternal. Chetnas Chetnasnam. That everyone is conscious, the Lord is conscious. And the question is, what is the difference between everyone and Lord? Eko bhavanamya vidati kama. And there is one person who is fulfilling the desires of everyone else. And that one person is the personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada said there are different varieties of living entities on different planets. And they all derive the eatables from their planets in different forms. On the basis of these descriptions, how can one assume that there are no living entities on the moon? Every moon is earthly, being composed of the 5 elements. Every planet produces different types of food according to the needs of its residents. According to the Vedic Shastras, it is not true that the moon does not produce food or that no living entity is living there. So this is one of the statements of the Vedas and one of the statements of Prabhupada that will be proven over time. So on the authority of the scriptures, Prabhupada repeatedly says that there are inhabitants all over the universe. Moon is considered to be a heavenly planet. How can it be barren? In the second chapter, when the soul is described as Sarvagata, Sarvagata means going everywhere. Prabhupada comments on it, saying that it's said in the Bhagavad Gita that the soul is everywhere, which means that it's there in the sun planet, it is there in the moon planet, it is there in even the distant planets. Here Prabhupada is making the same point, that different planets will produce the necessities for the inhabitants who are tuned to live over there. Those who live in the sun planet have bodies made of fire. Their food is fire. That's what they eat. And the human race is currently looking for human beings in other planets. And that's why it is fundamentally wrong that the Earth planet is specifically created to support the human form of life, the particular gross form that we have. Another planet is specifically created to support the life of the entities that reside on their planet, and they produce the food accordingly. Just like sun produces fire, so that the residents of the sun planet can consume that fire and nourish their body. So Prabhupada repeats that many, many times, and this is something that the devotees say that eventually when science will become advanced enough that they can detect forms of life beyond their limited understanding, then they will understand these statements of the scriptures. Okay, moving on, verse 27. Evam prithvadaya prithvim anada swanam atmanaha dohavatsadibhedena kshiravedam kurudvaha. My dear Vidura, chief of the Kurus, in this way, King Prithu and all others who subsist on food created different types of calves and milked out their respective eatables. Thus, they received the various foodstuffs which were symbolized as milk. So, continuing of the ceremony, that everybody milked their desire, swanam, as different flavors of milk, symbolized as milk. Verse 28. Tato mahi patihi prita sarvakam dugam prithu dhuitrute chakarema premna duhitravatsalah. Thereafter, King Prithu was very satisfied with the planet Earth, for she sufficiently supplied all food to various living entities. Thus, he developed an affection for planet Earth, just as if she were his own daughter. And that's one reason she's called Prithvi. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti, when he comments on his verse, he says that it would have been inappropriate for Maharaj Prithu to accept Mother Earth as a wife, because he milked her for food with his own hands. So one might say, okay, then he could have taken her as a mother. So he says no. Vishwanath Chakravarti says no. It would have been inappropriate for him to take her as a mother because he had previously threatened to punish her and kill her with his own arrows. So if you remember, Prithu Maharaj at one point said that not only will I kill you, I will cut out your flesh and feed it to my citizens. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that not the kind of words that a child can speak to the mother. So it would have been inappropriate for him to accept her as a mother. But because his affection had manifested, he accepted her as a daughter. Now, this does not mean that the father can milk the daughter for milk, or the father can threaten the daughter to kill. But these moods are completely inappropriate in the other rasas. So, because the father is allowed to chastise the daughter, and because the father is allowed to take sustenance from a daughter in certain circumstances. So the relationship that Prithu Maharaj accepted was that of the daughter. Okay, verse 29. Chunyan swadhanushkotya girikuta nirajara bhumandalam idam venya prayaschakra-samam vibhuhu. After this, the king of all kings, Maharaj Prithu, leveled all rough places on the surface of the globe by breaking up the hills with the strength of his bow. By his grace, the surface of the globe almost became flat. So in 4 verses from here till the end of the chapter is the establishment of planned cities by Prithu. So Prabhupada says that generally King Indra, he does that. With a thunderbolt, he breaks the mountains and he levels the land. But Prithu did not need King Indra's help because he is the personality of Godhead. So simply by his bow, he leveled it. So point Prabhupada is making that when the Lord appears, then all the powers of the demigods are already present in the Lord. He does not need to take any help from the demigods. If he appears to take help, it is just to glorify them, just for the purpose of pastime. Prithu Maharaj is also known as the first architect of planned cities. So prior to that, people would live naturally in the wild. But the establishment of planned cities was actually started by Prithu Maharaj. Verse 30. Athasmin bhagwan vainya prajanam vritida pita nivasan kalpayam chakre tatra tatra yatharataha. To all the citizens of the state, King Prithu was as good as a father. Thus, he was visibly engaged in giving them proper sustenance and proper employment for subsistence. After leveling the surface of the globe, he earmarked different places for residential quarters in as much as they were desirable. So we see that this is how cities are planned, that earmarking different places for residential quarters, different places for commercial, different places for business and for parks and recreation. So Prithu Maharaj, in this way, he planned the cities. Maitreya also glorifies, saying that Prithu Maharaj was visibly engaged. So visibly engaged means that he was doing work himself. He was not the kind of leader who delegated everything and basically worked in the background. So he's talking about qualities of good leaders. Quality of good leaders is, and of course, they cannot do everything. Now, Prithu Maharaj is an exception. He's a personality of Godhead. But even in contemporary times or historical times, we see good leaders are ones who are visibly engaged. That if they are generals, they will come to the battlefield and fight. If they are if they are doing construction work, they will themselves be there at the building sites. Even though they may work remotely. They could work remotely, but quality of a good leader is to be visibly engaged. Visible to whom? Visible to all the others who are working. What's the other quality that is mentioned over here? That by giving them subsistence and proper employment for subsistence. So both are important. For those who are old, who are incapable, who are children, to them Maharaj Prithu gave subsistence. But for those who were able, he gave them employment for subsistence. Because he did not want to create an environment where people would just become parasites. Now, Prithu Maharaj was quite capable of sustaining everyone. But for those who were capable, he created opportunities for them to generate their own subsistence. Because through that, they developed good qualities like a respect for hard work, integrity, honesty. They remained engaged. They became productive. So again, good qualities of leaders. That he made a distinction. So for those who were sick or old or children or women, he gave them subsistence. That yes, you can take. And for others, he said, work in this way and then you will get subsistence. Okay. Verse 31. Gramam pura patnani durgani vidadani cha ghoshan rajan sasibran akaran kheta kharvatan. In this way, the king founded many types of villages, settlements, towns, and built forts, residences for cowherdsmen, stables for animals, places for the royal camps, mining places, agriculture towns, and mountain villages. Vishnu Chakravarti does a little bit of analysis. He says that Graman are villages without markets. Puras are those villages that have markets. When Pura becomes large, it is Patana. And Prithu Maharaj made various forts. So Brahaspati says, Audaham Parvatam Vaksham Arinam Dhanvan Mantala. That a fortress can be protected by water, mountains, tree, barrens, land, or desert. Goshan means is the places for cowherds. Vrajan is the places for cows. Sibiran is the place for soldiers. Akanenans are mines that produce gold and silvers. And Khet means agricultural villages near the mountains. Okay. So we are on the last verse of the chapter. Prag prathor ihane visha pura grama dikalpana yatha sukham vasantisma tatra kuto bhayah. Before the reign of King Prithu, there was no planned arrangement for different cities, villages, pasturing grounds, etc. Everything was scattered, and everyone constructed his residential quarters according to his own convenience. However, from the time of King Prithu, plans were made for towns and villages. So that's why Prithu Maharaj is called as the first of the architects for cities. Prabhupada says from this statement, it appears that town and city planning is not new, but has been coming down since the time of King Prithu. In India, we can see regular planning methods evident in very old cities. In Srimad Bhagavatam, there are many descriptions of such ancient cities, even 5,000 years ago. Lord Krishna's capital Dwarka was well planned, and similar other cities, Mathura and Hastinapur, now New Delhi, were also well planned. Thus, the planning of cities and town is not a modern innovation, but was existing in bygone ages. So this is the end of the chapter 18. Prithu Maharaj milks the earth planet, divided into three parts. The first part is Mother Earth surrendering to Prithu Maharaj and giving him advice on how to milk her. The second part is Prithu Maharaj and other personalities milking the earth. And the last concluding part is the establishment of planned cities by Prithu Maharaj. So I'll pause over here and see if we have comments and discussions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I have one quick question, Prabhuji. You have explained that Mother Earth, cannot be treated in this particular scenario as a mother. So he accepted her as his daughter. But Mother Earth is the consort of the Supreme Lord. But in this scenario, it seems there is no mention as such. Any explanation provided, Prabhuji?
Yeah, doesn't seem to be any specific explanation addressing that point, other than the fact that Prithu Maharaj was a Shakti Veshavtar. So he was not the personality of Godhead, but he was an empowered. He was empowered. And this is my explanation, frankly speaking. I haven't actually read anywhere an explanation that raises or addresses this point.
Yeah, yes, Prabhuji, that makes sense. Even Mother Earth also in her prayers not treating him, or not said anything in that line as husband. So
she doesn't, right? In the conversation, she never alludes to the fact that she says, I'm a cow and I'm a woman. And as a king, you should protect both cows and women. But she never addresses the fact that I'm your wife.
Yeah, so it fully echoes with your explanation, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This scenario of Mother Earth concealing all its, whatever mineral and everything that she has, will happen again toward the end of Kali Yuga, no? Because at that time there will be no Prithu Maharaj. And the person like Prithu Maharaj, we won't have milk, we won't have vegetable, no?
Because same conditions will become prevalent at that time also.
Yes. No yagna.
No yagya, impiety, and Mother Earth will respond in the same way. So in the 12th canto it is mentioned that how no grains will be produced, there will be scarcity of everything. So similar symptoms. But unfortunately, Prithu Maharaj will not appear, Kalki will appear at that time. And he has a different plan for how to remediate that situation.
We a sword.
He has a sword, but his sword is turned towards the citizens. Maharaj Prithu's sword was turned towards Mother Earth because he was protecting citizens. But Kalki's sword is turned towards the citizens, the empire citizens. It's a different plan.
Yeah.
And yes, Prabhuji, that makes sense also, right? Because the citizens are impious only during King Vena's time. But after Prithu became king, everything was back to normal. So his action is more justifiable in both the scenarios.
Yeah, and so it is said that King Vena forbade them from performing sacrifices. So it was also because of the restrictions that were placed by the king, and also to some extent by the association of the king. that because King Vena was himself a dacoit, the dacoits were flourishing. Like, as the leaders are, the followers are there. Also, later on, I think the situation will be different. People will naturally be impious, not because of the influence of a particular leader, but more because of the influence of time.
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll end here. We'll start with the new chapter next Monday. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare